MLB trade deadline, the gift that keeps on giving. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Max Sports Entertainment. My name is Deepak Shankar, and we're here to recap four specific moves to recap the final day of the MLB trade deadline from this past Monday. You can check out part one that'll be up sometime tomorrow morning or afternoon that I already did, recapping most of the moves. So now, especially the main ones. So now we're just going to go through the last four what I thought to be major moves that I wanted to discuss with the MLB trade deadline as we get ready for the stretch run the second half of the year and the playoffs and what's been a really good season. And so firstly, Huascar Brazoban, the reliever from the New York Mets, 36 years old, traded from the Mets to the White Sox in exchange for a couple minor league pitchers. That's a good get for the White Sox. I mean, he's a good reliever. He's having his best year, under 3 ERA, about 50 strikeouts in 50 innings. And he's a great bullpen get where I think their hitting was already really good, as we discussed before, especially what they showed in the Yankee series, and even when they lost a couple of those games to the Red Sox and just that Red Sox series overall just recently. So their hitting is good, but really their starting pitching was okay, but could be better, and their bullpen especially needed some work. And so it was great. I mean, so he'll kind of be able to slide in with Grant Taylor, especially Jordan Hicks, Brian Hudson, among others, to sort of solidify that bullpen a little bit more as the White Sox look to go all in on a team that, crazy, just a couple of years ago they had set the AL record for, I think, the longest losing streak with 21 games, and now they're in the AL wildcard race 2 years later with a bunch of young talent and looking to go all in, looking to win now. It just shows how things can change fast in the MLB and professional sports. And so definitely rooting for the White Sox, just from a distance, obviously being a Phillies fan, but it would be good to see them do well. Don't know too many White Sox fans, but I'd be happy for my boy Kenny Beecham. Shout out to him, NBA YouTuber, big Chicago sports fan, including the Chicago White Sox. So I'm sure he'd be happy. He'd be overjoyed with what he's seeing, with what the White Sox have been doing. But I think it's a good move for them overall. And then Mets, obviously, they made a million trades, just offloading player after player, good players, bad players in between. So makes sense for them. And the White Sox, I think it makes sense for them. I mean, their team is better post-trade deadline than they were pre-trade deadline. And honestly, that's the whole goal of the trade deadline in the first place. And so, secondly, Luke Batcher traded to the Pittsburgh Pirates from the Miami Marlins in a deal where the Marlins got a shortstop, an outfielder, and a right-handed pitcher, three not really great players. And the Marlins, I mean, it makes sense for them. We'll see if they're able to develop those guys. Same thing with the Mets and all these other teams that sold off a lot of players. But the Pirates kind of stuck in the middle again, as we talked about in the previous video, where it's like we don't know if they were fully committed to going all in or committed to selling off parts. And in terms of being buyers or sellers, where teams like the Cubs and Red Sox, that they were buyers, and then teams like the Mets and Giants, that they were sellers, and then teams like the Marlins, they were sellers. The Phillies, they were buyers. So pretty much every other team you knew where their stance was, I feel like, except the Pittsburgh Pirates, maybe the Milwaukee Brewers to a lesser extent. But I think the Pirates makes sense, strengthening their bullpen more. Their starting pitching is good, so their bullpen needed some work and hadn't been great for them all year. And so I think it makes sense for the Pirates. As for the Marlins, I mean, they had a good stretch. I believe it was June or July where they were playing 500 baseball, but I think they realized they weren't going anywhere and wanted to, strike while the iron was hot and sort of rebuild for the future through the trade deadline. And so this will definitely help, and got a couple good prospects. So we'll see how it plays out for them. And then thirdly, Casey Mize. This was a shocker at the end of the day, getting traded to the San Diego Padres from the Detroit Tigers. The Tigers, who had one of the best rotations in Major League Baseball this year, with Casey Mize and Tarek Skubal leading the way, and so that's a true elite starting level pitcher that the Padres got. So that's a big get for them, especially because their hitting's been really good, especially been coming on as of late with Tatis and Sam Merrill, and the like, Manny Machado. But they definitely needed to bolster their starting pitching. And this, I mean, they pretty much traded for an ace at the trade deadline, which I feel like doesn't happen all that often, especially one that's having a year as good as Casey Mize now, as part of the Tigers, who had, with multiple really good pitchers, had one of the best starting pitching rotations in all of Major League Baseball pre-trade deadline, but despite not having a great record. And so first the Dodgers benefit, and now the Padres in their own division benefit. So that should be an interesting sort of battle, especially if the Padres can make the playoffs, as to how big these trades were for each team. And obviously we know the history and the bad blood between these two organizations. And the Padres also added Robbie Ray, who's also a good pitcher, in terms of being a starting pitcher to a lesser extent. So I think the Padres really needed and necessary moves for them. So it was great that they were able to pull off this trade, especially because multiple teams were interested in Casey Mize, and they were able to get this deal done right at the buzzer, right before 6 p.m. As per, I think, Bob Nightingale and Jeff Passan all reported that same thing. And so the Tigers, they're looking to rebuild. They know that Mize and Scuba are going to be free agents after this year. They're not going to be able to pay him, so it makes sense to just trade him, at least get something back, build for the future. Their payroll isn't great, so it makes sense for them to trade off even great players like that. So especially because they probably weren't going anywhere this year. That's a great move for the Padres, and they've been looking better recently, especially post All-Star break overall. So we'll see if it continues for them throughout the rest of August and September. And then lastly, Tyler Wells, the Tampa Bay Rays acquired him, right-handed pitcher. That's a reliever, getting him from the Baltimore Orioles. The Orioles were also big sellers of the deadline, having traded Adley Rutschman, and then I believe Taylor Ward as well, or no, he might have been in Miami if I'm not mistaken. But the Tampa Bay Rays were big buyers of the deadline with this move and a couple other moves. Adley Rutschman and trading Tyler Wells as well in terms of being sellers of the deadline for the Orioles. So the Rays get Wells in exchange for Michael Forrest, starting pitcher, but Tyler Wells, right-handed reliever, he's part of the Orioles moves that sent Tyler Wells to the Rays. So I think it makes sense for the Rays. Obviously, they're going all in. They're one of the best teams in the AL. They have arguably as good of a chance as anyone to get to the World Series, to their first World Series since 2020. And this just helps that. Obviously, gives them more bullpen depth, like a lot of these moves, especially in this video, which was much needed. Starting pitching's good, hitting's good, defense is good, and the bullpen was really the one area where the Rays were kind of lacking, and now they've kind of shored that up. So we'll see if it takes them places, and they can go on a deep playoff run. And for the first time in a while, Orioles, it makes sense. I mean, they had this big rebuild, had a promising future, but hasn't lived up to the billing the past couple of years. So makes sense that they're gonna sell high on a bunch of players and just look to rebuild for the future. Like we said in the last video, they're not great at developing players historically. I mean, there's some exceptions, but generally they're not one of the best organizations in terms of farm systems. But we'll see if it pays off with Michael Forrest or whoever else in terms of their top prospects. And like I said, it was crazy trade deadline, all sorts of action. Basically, it felt like a trade was happening once every 10 minutes. I constantly had to keep my phone on, so it was really engaging and exciting stuff. And we'll see overall just how these moves in the big picture affect all these different teams, especially the ones who got these bigger players. These teams that I all mentioned are all going to be playoff teams, at least the vast majority of them. So we'll see the type of role that Skubal and Adley Rutschman and Casey Mize and Luis Arias, players like that, Luke Weaver, Kevin Gausman. We'll see the type of impacts that those guys can have for their new respective teams. And then we'll see about the teams that traded off those players, like the Giants and the Marlins, the Orioles, etc. We'll see how they can sort of develop long term in the future, maybe let's say 3-4 years down the road. And so I mean it's possible. I mean, you look at teams like the White Sox, you look at teams like the Red Sox. I mean, teams that just 1 or 2 years ago didn't look like they had much of a future, weren't really going anywhere. But teams like the Cubs too, where now you're looking at those teams much differently, especially the Cubs and Red Sox, where it's like, could those teams be in the World Series? Could those teams win the World Series? So, it's just, even though there's obviously been a lot of talk about the salary cap and how it's needed for baseball, it's the only league that doesn't have it, and competitive advantage. I would argue that actually baseball has had the most parity numbers-wise compared to even the NBA and the NFL over the past quarter century. And that baseball, I think it's just the weirdest sport. I mean, it's the sport where you can have the most amount of, like, excuse my language, but what the fuck moments, like, that are not explainable compared to those other two major American sports. And so I think, while I understand the arguments for the salary cap, and we'll see how that goes at the end of the season between the MLB, PA, and the owners, and if there's a lockout, and if it affects the 2027 season, if it's a 1994 situation, or if it's like a few years ago where the season still happened after a new collective bargaining agreement and some disagreements between the players and the owners. But I think, while I understand, like I said, the arguments for the salary cap and to make it even, in theory it sounds good, and it obviously has worked for those other sports, but I think baseball is good with where it's at. It's in a healthy place, and I think it just, I don't think even just high payrolls and just buying championships works as well without a salary cap like it would. Like it had shown in the past with the NFL before they implemented a salary cap, and the NBA before they implemented all these rules with the first and second apron, luxury tax, and things like that. So I think I like I said, I like where baseball's at. I think a lot of teams can win the World Series. I know the betting odds are like, oh, the Dodgers, they're just writing them in as World Series champions. I don't see that. I don't see that. So we'll see if that is the case, or if a new team wins, if a team like the Blue Jays emerges this year, a team that made a crazy run and really should have won the World Series last year, as I talked about previously, but weren't able to close. We'll see if a team's able to close and prevent the Dodgers from being the first 3-peat champions since the 98 to 2000 Yankees. And so, yeah, that's all I had. Appreciate you guys for listening. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, turn on post notifications, share, all that good stuff, and we'll see how the rest of the season plays out. Should be a lot of fun. We'll be here to recap all sorts of MLB games, obviously, throughout the rest of the regular season and heading into the playoffs. And so, especially now that the rosters are set post-trade deadline, so it'll be easier to evaluate all these teams, players coming back from injury, etc. So, yeah, be sure to tune in for that. Yeah, thanks again for listening, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one.